B at the Mishnah. Oh, there's a few Mishnahs here. The bottom Mishnah. Nedarim Daf. We thank Hashem we're able to learn Torah every day. And in this course of our learning, we should have the base of English immediately. The Mishnah starts out like this. Nedarim Daf. Someone says he's not going to drink milk. Takes a vow. He's like lactose intolerant or something. I don't know. Maybe he doesn't like the ads for got milk. So mutter bekum, he's still allowed to have whey. Whey with the H.
It's plant-based, no?
No, the whey is when you take the fats out of the milk, you're left with just the whey of it's just the liquid. When you make yogurt, you're left with the whey. Cheese. When you make cheese, you're left with the whey. Little stuff on the top of the yogurt is the whey.
A little Miss Muffet. All the curves and ways.
Something like that.
Yeah.
It also has in parentheses K-U-M.
They're translating they're transliterating the Hebrew, probably, because kum is the Hebrew for whey. Rabbi Yossi says no. He took a vow he's not going to have milk. He can't have the whey either. Now, maybe Rabbi Yossi holds that there's in the whey, there's little drops of milk. There may be little pieces in it. The commentary here says, tzachzuche chalav. Okay. Minakum. Let's say he takes a vow he's not going to have whey. Mutter b'chalav, he's allowed to have milk. That's interesting because there's clearly whey in milk, but nevertheless he's allowed to have milk. He only took a vow that he's not going to have whey. It's an interesting, because he meant specifically whey that he wasn't going to have, or else he would have said something else. Would have said milk. Very interesting. Supposed to be. Someone takes a vow he's not going to have cheese, so he can't have cheese. Doesn't matter if it's salted cheese or if it's bland cheese. Doesn't matter.
If someone says milk, that includes cheese.
That's a good question. I don't know.
It's just milk with enzymes.
Right.
No, I think later it explains that if you point out that milk, then if that milk becomes cheese, you're not allowed.
Right. But if he just says plain milk, then that would be acceptable. That makes sense. It makes sense. Very good. Nedarim ben Abbasar. Son takes a vow.
I'm just trying to hear.
Oh, should I speak louder? Nedarim ben Abbasar. If someone, you want to sit there? Someone takes a vow from meat. He's not going to eat meat. So mutter b'reita v'b'kipa. He's allowed to have the gravy from the meat, and he's allowed to have also on the bottom of the pot of the stew. There's like these little particles of meat. He's allowed to have that. That's not little particles from everything that drips down. No, I'm talking about a guy that took a vow that he's not going to eat meat. So is he allowed to have the soup from the meat? He is, yes, allowed to. He's allowed to also have, because when we deal with the vow, we're talking about people's language, what they meant when they said meat. So meant when he said meat was meat. No, he didn't mean this.
Like the broth they could have.
The broth, right. Rabbi Yehuda Iser. Rabbi Yehuda makes it, says that it's Aser. Now, the Ran's Girsa is that it's Rabbi Yossi Iser. Rabbi Yossi says that it's Aser. And that would fit with Rabbi Yossi before, that he said you can't have the whey. If you took a vow not to have milk, you can't have the whey. Well, if you took a vow not to have meat, you can't have the juice of the meat. It would match. It would match with that opinion. Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Now Rabbi Yehuda steps in to support Rabbi Yossi. According to that version, he says, wasn't he allowed to have the eggs that were cooked together with the meat? Sounds like a Sephardic challah. Shakshuka is eggs with peppers and tomatoes and stuff. But this is with eggs and meat. Well, what are we seeing from Reb Tarfon's view? That it's not the actual meat, and nevertheless it's prohibited. Seems to support Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi. Okay. Amalai, they responded to that. They said, Keina davar. That's true. But Amasai, only in a case when there's Manshiyamar Basar Zeh alai. If he says, I'm not going to eat this meat, not that he says, I'm not going to eat meat. If he says, I'm not going to eat meat, then we have to just determine what do you mean by meat. But if he says, I'm not going to eat this meat, then we have to see if this meat has given a flavor into any other foods, because you can't have this meat. If you say this meat, then this meat becomes like treif. And any flavor that it gives to anything else would make it prohibited for the person. He says, I'm not going to eat meat. Then we just have to look in the dictionary, in the user dictionary, right? What does meat mean when someone says meat? What does it mean? And we say that it only means actual meat. But if he says this meat, then we have to see what flavor it gave. Yeah, someone takes a vow from something and he says, like, this is prohibited to me. So then, if it's going to give a flavor into something else, then it's also prohibited. What's a flavor?
Still have the broth, right?
1 in 60. Then he cannot have the broth. If he says that I'm not going to eat this meat, then he can't even have the broth. Yeah.
Hi, good morning.
Hey, Maisha, how are you?
Baruch Hashem.
I lost the... We just did the Mishnah.
Okay, thanks. I'll open up my form. I'll just take a look at. Thank you.
Actually, we didn't finish the Mishnah. We're on Nun Beis Amud Aleph.
Does the commentary give the reason for extending the thing itself to the flavor? I mean, that's such an important concept.
Yeah, because it becomes treif, and it becomes any flavor that comes out of it is going to be part of it. It's going to be considered. You're asking about Tamki Iker, and that's
yeah, this is. I understand once we have the principle that the flavor is like the thing itself.
Right.
Well, what's the rationale for that principle? We treat flavor as if it's the thing itself.
Right. We don't have that discussion here. We don't have that discussion here. That's a Chulin discussion about Tamki Iker. Yeah. But here we have other discussions, which is in a moment. Let's finish the Mishnah. It says, Haneidim in Ayayin. Someone takes a vow from wine. He's allowed to have a stew or any dish that has the flavor of wine. That has the taste of wine, I guess, because the wine was added like an ingredient. Amar kainim yayin zeh shani tayim. But let's say he says, this wine that I drink is prohibited, not for the tafshel, and then it fell into a stew. Then it would be prohibited. Sometimes they add like a sweet wine into a fruit salad or something, or they put wine in meat, right? The cooking wine. So that would be prohibited if there's a flavor. What would we consider a flavor? 1 in 60. Okay, if you notice, if you have a traditional Gemara, there's this huge Ran. It is?
That's not all of it.
Whole page. It's a whole page. Right. The whole page. This whole page is the Ran. I'm just gonna go through the Ran's main points here because it's a foundation for big discussion. A big discussion. Starts off like this. We just mentioned that if you have 1 in 60, of the wine or of the meat inside, if you have 1 in 60, then it's going to be prohibited. Let's say you don't have 1 in 60. Let's say you have 1 in 61, 1 in 100, and it's going to be nullified. It's going to be permissible, right? We call it batal. It's going to be nullified. And it's going to be permissible for him to eat because it doesn't give a flavor. It's too small. Can you hear me? Yeah? Because sometimes it turns off the... Can you hear me, Moshe? Okay. So the Ran has a question. He says that could be it's a davar sheyesh. Okay, my wife is in England. Okay, so if it's a 5 hours. So if it's a davar sheyesh material means something that will in the future become permissible. Now, normally we view it like this: that let's say on Yom Tov or on Shabbos, there's an egg that's laying an egg, and you go out into the yard, you see the chicken that laid an egg. So now that egg fell into all the eggs that was laying yesterday. You don't know which one was the one that was from today.
It's on Shabbos, you said.
It's on Shabbos,
Yeah.
Yom Tov. So it's prohibited. Even if there's 1,000 eggs there, it doesn't matter because it's called the davar sheyesh material. Since this evening, it's going to be permissible. After Shabbos, you're allowed to eat it. Yeah. It's only on Shabbos, you're not. So we say, why nullify it today when it could be permissible tomorrow? It's called the davar sheyesh material, a matter that will become permissible. Something that will be permissible, we say, is never nullified. So the Ran asks, I don't get what's going on over here. I have a vow, and I have something that the vow, the prohibited item, which is the meat, let's say, has given a flavor into other things that are permissible. But, and we say that the prohibited item becomes nullified, right? The flavor in it why should be nullified? Go to the rabbi and get rid of the vow. It's a davar sheyesh material.
What you said,
and therefore nothing should be nullified. Why do we rely on the rules of bittul? Just like by the egg, we don't rely on the rules of bittul. We say wait till this evening and it will be permissible. The same thing is with the vow. Don't use the rules of bittul. Go to the rabbi and make it permitted. That's the Ran's question. That's how he begins his discussion. You have a question?
You said like a key idea here. You said something that's permitted at a different time is permissible at that time.
No, something that will be permitted later would not be nullified before it's permitted, because we say that why should you use the rules of nullification? Just wait till the later time when it's permissible anyway, and then it will be permissible. In other words, like why rely on a heter when it's going to be permissible anyway? Why rely on the nullification on the bit? So the Ran gives his answer, and his answer is the introduction to what he's going to say. His answer is that when do I say davar sheyesh matirin is not batal? That's only if it's a min b'minai, like the egg with other eggs. But over here, it's meat into the chalant, so that's min b'sheina min. I say that it's nullified.
You can't even taste it, like if it's with other eggs.
And you can't taste it. Well, when it's one egg with other eggs, I won't be able to taste it either because it's 1 in 60 and the taste is the same anyway. The taste is the same. But over there, I say that it's never nullified. But min b'sheina min, I say that it is nullified. 1 in 60. Okay, now you have a question. This is going to develop. There's going to be a few steps to this.
So now it has me thinking: when do we use this approach that instead of making it like prohibited, we ask a rabbi to remove the vow?
Okay, leave that question. That's going to hold discussion. Okay. So now the only question that he has now is, well, first of all, he has a support for this. He has a support from a Mishnah in Chala. Mishnah discusses that if you mix a dough or a starter into rice, from wheat into rice, you don't have to take challah off rice. You only have to take it off wheat. Right? When challah, you have to separate a piece of the dough. So if you mix something into this rice, he says if it gives a taste, then it's batal.
Yeah.
Now he says like this. One second. But why should it be batal? You could just remove the challah. And it doesn't have to be batal. So he says, whatever the case is, you have to work out the details. But he says that because it's one type of grain in another type of grain, if rice is a grain, into another type, so then we say that it's batal, even if there would be a davar sheish l'matin, even if there would be a solution besides for bittul. That's a support. And he says, it's clear in Yerushalmi, he quotes that. He has a question now. The Rif has a ruling. The Rif is Rabbi Yitzchak Alfasi, was a, I guess like he lived in the 1000s. He says, he's one of the Rishonim, the early Rishonim. He says that he was a teacher of the Rambam and a teacher of the Rambam's father. He rules that, let's say bread was baked in an oven. And in that oven, there was, at the same time, there was meat. So the flavor from the meat, the steam, it's not really steam, it's a small like residual flavor that goes from the meat into the bread. So the Rif rules that you should not eat that bread with milk, with kutach, was a milk dip. Right. You can't do it. And he says, because it's a davar sheish l'matirin. Why is it a davar sheish l'matirin? It's never going to become not fleshik. He says, even though the flavor of the meat that's in that bread is so minuscule, but we say that it's never nullified. Because why does he have to eat it with kutach? Go eat it with other meat. Yeah. You don't have to eat it. So he calls it a davar sheish l'matirin because you have another solution.
You don't become fleshik though. You
don't become fleshik, right? But just why should you? Don't dip it into your yogurt. What do they call the dip? Labena. Have it with meat. Have it with. Okay. Problem is the flavor of the meat inside of the roasted meat inside this bread is a min b'shein amina. Ran just introduced that you don't say davar sheish l'matirin in this if it's a different species. You only say davar sheish l'matirin that it will become permissible later, so don't rely on the nullification. If it's the same type, but here it's a different type. Meat and bread is different types. So why should we say that it never becomes nullified? We have a proof from our Mishnah that it does become nullified, right? The flavor of the meat so it seems to contradict this Rif. Okay. So now he gives the Ran gives his. Go ahead.
I got lost. The bread could never be eaten with dairy, right?
Right. Why? Because you have another solution. It's called the yesh lein matirin. Matirin means it has a permissible way out.
Yeah, but wouldn't it be that we can't eat meat and dairy?
Right.
Wouldn't that be the reason?
Yeah. But it's not because it's because this bread itself, which has a residual amount of meat in it, should not be eaten with the milk. But why don't we say that residual, that's just minuscule amount, should be nullified in the bread? It's just like a scent from the oven. So why don't we say that it's nullified in the bread? The bread is for sure 60 times that little particles. So we should say that it's nullified and we should be allowed to eat it. And the Rif says, no, it's not nullified because you have a solution of eating it with other meat. And so it's a davar sheish l'matirin. The question is that when did we say davar sheish l'matirin is never nullified? That was like the story with the eggs. That's when all at the same species, all eggs. But here it's bread and meat. It's different. And just like we learned in our Mishnah, that that meat in a stew was nullified if there's one, even though you could go to a rabbi and annul the vow, which means you have another solution. But we say no, min b'shein amina is nullified.
There's no case for batal b'shishim.
Rabbi Smith.
We would say if it's min b'mina, it's not batal b'shishim. But if it's min b'shein amina, it is batal b'shishim, and the kasha is on the Rif.
Seems to me that this comment of the Ran proves too much, because going this way, who needs any hataring for a b'diavad? Don't eat it.
No.
That seems to be his answer. Don't eat it.
Yeah.
Well, you could say that for any of our Hitarim.
Okay. Okay. I hear what you're saying. Okay. Bread, on the other hand, is something that very easily is eaten at any sort of meal. So it's not saying like, why don't you just tell me to throw it out? Yeah, I'm telling you, no, any meal, bread goes with everything. So you don't have to eat it with it. Eat it with that. You're going to say, but I'm only eating milchiks this week, and by then the bread's going to be spoiled. Bread goes with every meal. Okay. So the Ran, because of this question, the Ran introduces his theory. His theory goes like this: that the truth is, based on a machlekes Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim in Masechta Zvachim, in Menachos, it says that the Kohen Gadol would sprinkle from the blood of the par and the blood of the sower, the blood of the bull and the blood of the goat. They would mix together the two bloods, and he would sprinkle it. So the Gemara says, everyone knows that there's more blood from the bull than there is from the goat. The bull is a larger animal. Why don't we say that the blood of the goat is nullified? So Rabbi Yehuda proves from this that you say min b'mina is not batal. One, because they're both blood and blood is not nullified. So that's Rabbi Yehuda's view. Min b'mina is like batal. The Chachamim say no, min b'mina is batal. What was going on over there? Why do I say the blood is not batal in the blood? The goat's blood is not batal. So because over there, both of them are kachim. Both bloods are sacrifices. Which means that the Chachamim hold like this, that whenever I have two items, one is prohibited, and let's say 2 pieces of meat. One's prohibited and one's permissible. So I say that really the same type really should only strengthen. If it's both meat, it really should only strengthen. But there's 2 things that I need to look at. I need to look at the physical matter that they both meet, but I also have to look at the spiritual side of it. One of them is permissible and one of them is prohibited. That is a much bigger difference than the material side. So the Chachamim say that you look at the spiritual side of it. One is Isser and one is Heter. And so I say that that's considered min b'she'eina mina, and that's why it's batal. Even though it's the same thing. Really, in other words, everyone accepts min b'mina is loy batal. Type and the type, same type, is not nullified. But over here, even though it's the same type externally, but spiritually, it's 2 different things, because one is prohibited and one's permissible.
When you say
based on this,
because of
Isser and Heter. Isser, one, oh,
like
so
you take a vow yourself, or it's chazor.
So take a look at this. Back to the blood of the dama, of the blood of the bull and the blood of the goat. Over there, I can't prove anything, because over there, both of them are sacrifices.
Yeah.
So that's a real min b'mina. It's only by other cases where I have what we deal with is one type is prohibited, one type is permissible. Over there, I'm going to say that it's considered a min b'she'eina mina and it's really batal. So the chachamim that say min b'mina is batal, it's not because the old min b'mina is batal. The same type and the same type is nullified. They really hold that it's not batal. The only thing is that when you look at 2 items and it looks like the same on the label, it looks the same. One is prohibited and one's permissible. That's really a min b'she'eina mina. That's really a different type, because the spiritual side of it is more significant than the physical side of it. So we say that it's nullified. Okay.
But neither be considered.
Very good. Now back to us. Therefore, when it comes to, he explains like this: there's 2 types of davar sheish l'matirin. You see, a davar sheish l'matirin, how should I view it? Do I view it that it's considered the same type as the prohibited, or do I view it as the same type that it's do I view it as that it's prohibited, or do I view it that it's permissible? Because if it's the same quality spiritually, then it's not going to be nullified. So what's really happening is that davar sheish l'matirin is the same quality as the permissible, and therefore it's not nullified. So when I 2 eggs, when it's one egg that was laid on Shabbos or Yom Tov, falls into 1,000. So first of all, they're both eggs.
So that would be a spiritual.
And also the egg is really permissible because tonight it's going to be, it's not because why rely on the heter. It's because it's not bottled because it's the same type. Now, if it's the same type, then why don't you say it's heter? Well, it is really heter, but this evening. So I say that I can't eat it now because it's not bottled now because it's the same type as everything else, so it can't be nullified. Okay, now back to the Rif. We are saying that davar sheish l'matirin only works based on our Mishnah, that it only works by if it's the same type. But if it's a different type, for example, the meat in the stew, we say that it is nullified. Okay, because over there it's already different type. Like we learned that it has to be the same type in both aspects, both physically in the matter that, and also spiritually. So why does the Rif tell us that it applies even to the meat in the bread? So he says it's another type of davar sheish l'matirin. Another type of davar sheish l'matirin is when not later on it's going to be permissible, but actually right now it's permissible. When it's right now permissible, then I don't even look at the matter of it. Right now it is so permissible now that even right now, I don't have to wait till later to eat it. After Shabbos, I could eat this egg. Right now, I could take this bread that was cooked, was baked in an oven together with meat, and I could eat it with other meat. So really right now, it's permissible. If that's the case, then even if it's the flavor of the meat in the bread, it's also considered the same type. Because this is totally permissible. In other words, the spiritual side of it takes over entirely. There's one question. That's a few questions, but the one that sticks out here is that we talk about a discussion about if a piece of meat that came from a carbon get mixed in with other meat. So that seems to be min b'minai. And Rav Ashi says that it's not bottled because it's a davar sheish l'matirin. And the Gemara says, what do you mean it's a davar sheish l'matirin? Is it a davar sheish l'matirin because a Kohen can eat it? So then it was never prohibited. It's not even asa. Is it a davar sheish l'matirin for Yisrael? Then it's not davar sheish l'matirin. It's always prohibited. So what do you mean it's a davar sheish l'matirin? So the Gemara rejects it. The Gemara says, okay, Rav Ashi is a mistake, and you have to take it out. Badusa. Yeah, we have that expression sometimes. Hadar Rav Ashi badusa. Okay, well, according to this, you just told me that if it's permissible at the same time, that's considered a davar sheish l'matirin. You can eat it with bread. That's considered a davar sheish l'matirin. You can eat the bread with meat. That's considered a davar sheish l'matirin. Even stronger, right? So why, when it comes to the meat of the chatas, do we say it's not a davar sheish l'matirin because the Kohen can eat it? So the Ran just explains. Over there, we're talking about two different people eating it. Over here, I'm talking about the same person. Why do you have to eat it with cheese? The same person himself has another option. That's considered a davar sheish l'matirin. Okay, this is the Ran. What's his main point? His main point is that min b'mini, according to everyone, is not nullified. The same type is never nullified. It actually strengthens it. When you add in the same ingredient, it actually strengthens it. The only thing is, I don't look at the material side of it. I have to look at the spiritual side of it. And that's where the main differences take place. Is it permissible or is it prohibited? And that would make it into a different type. And I'm dealing with everything with two qualities, with two, okay, send the page. Got through the Ran. That was a week of smicha. Okay. The Gemara now says for a minute, we have a contradiction. We have a contradiction to what we learned in the Mishnah. It says like this: Min adashim. If someone takes a vow, he's not going to have adashim, which I think are lentils. So aser ba'ashishim. He's not allowed to have. Ashishim is a type of bread that has lentil flour in it. Okay, it's like what you would buy today in Whole Foods, some sort of, it's non gluten-free breads or something. So in Rabbi Yossi Mater, Rabbi Yossi says it's permissible. Now, if we look back at our Mishnah, we had Rabbi Yossi saying that if you take a vow from milk, then you can't have the whey. And the Chachamim said if you have the milk, if you take a vow from the milk, then you can, yes, have the whey, because the whey is not milk, right? You said milk, you didn't say whey. Rabbi Yossi says no. In the whey, the whey comes from the milk, it's part of the milk, and there may be some drops left. You can't have the whey either. That's Rabbi Yossi. Now take a look at what we just learned here. If you take a vow from lentils, the Chachamim, which were lenient before by the milk, say that you can, over here they're strict. They say that you can't have the whey. There's no way here. They say that you can't have the bread that has the lentil flour in it. And Rabbi Yossi, that was strict over there, by the way, says over here that you can have the lentil flour. Doesn't seem to fit. So I learned this according to the way the commentary of Rashi learns it. The Ran, on the other hand, says that there's only a question of Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yossi. On the Rabbanan, there's no question. The fact that the Rabbanan prohibited it here and they permitted it over there is because over there you extracted the whey from the milk, so it's not milk. But over here you didn't extract the lentils from the lentil. You didn't extract the lentil flour from the lentils. There's still lentil flour here. So the fact that it's prohibited according to the Rabbanan makes perfect sense. There is lentils in this. It's only Rabbi Yossi that over there, why did he prohibit it? And over here he permits it. Over there he prohibited the whey, and over here he permits the flour, which is odd. The Gemara says like kasha. It's not a question. Mark Yesrei and Mark Yesrei. Depends on where you live. And remember, we're following the vernacular. So Basar de Rabbanon, in the area where the rabbis are, kar lechalba chalba lekuma kuma. Over there they call whey and milk milk. Right? No way is the milk called whey. Okay, that's for Dr. Stein. So the Abbasid Rabbi Yossi, but in Rabbi Yossi's territory, then lekuma nami karale kuma dechelba.
No way.
Okay. But in the territory of Rabbi Yossi, they say it the way of milk. It's the way of milk. So because it's also called milk, so when he took a vow for milk, then he can't have the way either because it's called the way of milk. I think in those other milks they actually have whey also, in like coconut milk. I think it could separate also, and you're left with the whey. I think in the other milks there's also whey. So you would have to say the way of milk, meaning that it's not one of those other things. That could be. Okay. Tanya, start in a brayso. Someone takes a vow from milk, he's allowed to have the whey. Minakum, he takes a vow from the whey. He's allowed to have the milk. Minachalav, he takes a vow from milk. Mutabigvina, he's allowed to have the cheese, like you asked. Minagvina, if he takes a vow from cheese. Mutabachalav, he's allowed to have the milk. Because we're following just the vernacular, what the person calls it.
I don't know, maybe here's translated wrong. It says one who vows that milk is forbidden to him is permitted to eat cheese.
Good. Yeah.
Oh, I understand.
It's allowed.
Yeah.
Minaraitiv, if he takes a vow from the gravy, mutabakipa, he's allowed to have the sediment. Minakipa, if he takes a vow from the sediment, that's of the meat, the stew. Mutabaitiv, he's allowed to have the gravy, the broth. Im Amar Basar Ze Alai, if he says this meat is prohibited to me, Asar Baya Baraitva Kipai, then he can't have anything that comes from it, like we said before. He can't have the broth, he can't have the sediment. If he takes a vow for wine, he's allowed to have the meat that had wine in it, right? Or any other stew that has wine in it, because he only took a vow for wine. This is not wine. Amar Kainam Yayin Zeshanitayim, but if he says this wine is prohibited to me like a sacrifice, and then it fell a little bit of it into a stew, but it has the flavor of the wine, then it's prohibited, like we learned before, that over here, the item becomes treif for him. And then we say that it will only be permissible if it's nullified 1 in 60. Back to the Ran, why is it nullified 1 in 60? It's a davar shishul materin. So, well, it's not min b'minai, and over here, since it would only be permissible after it gets nullified, so it needs to be the same type as well. Okay. It's another Mishnah. Someone takes a vow from grapes. Mutter b'yayin, it's allowed to have wine. Minazesim takes a vow from olives. Mutter b'shemen, it's allowed to have olive oil. Amar kainam zeisim va'anavim elu shani tayim. If he says, these grapes and these olives that I taste are prohibited to me, that I will not taste, prohibited to me to taste them like this, like a sacrifice. Asr behem will be b'em. He's not allowed to have them, of course. He's also not allowed to have the wine or the oil that is produced from them.
How do you square that with a nazir with all grape products, grapes and grape juice?
So here we're really just talking about the vernacular. Over there, a nazir is not allowed to have grape products or any or wine. But here, this is talking about someone that took a vow. In the vow, we just want to know, what did you mean?
It applies to
Yeah, a nazir is allowed to have beer and scotch, whiskey, and vodka. It's allowed to have all that. You just can't have wine or grape products. There is a comment. It says yayin v'sheichar. It says that he can't have wine and beer. I think it's sheichar, but sheichar is not beer. Sheichar is like cognac. It's wine.
It comes from wine.
I
mean, from grapes.
It comes from grapes. It would be usually today we call sheichar, and even in Mishnah, sheichar is beer, but in the Torah it doesn't mean beer. There was a commentary that translated as beer, but it's not. Okay.
That's why I think most cognacs are not kosher.
Right. But you can get a kosher cognac.
Yeah, but probably
if you want. By Rami Bar Chama. Rami Bar Chama has a question. The problem with our Mishnah is that it made a distinction between if he says wine, or if he says this wine, or if he says grapes, or if he says these grapes. The problem is that was what the Mishnah did. The problem is that the Mishnah has one other variable here that it also switched, which makes it confusing of which one is the main characteristic that changes, that makes the contrast between these two cases. See, if he says grapes are prohibited to me, he's allowed to have wine. He only said grapes. But if he said these grapes, then he's not allowed to have wine. But there was one more variable here. If he says these grapes that I taste, then he's not allowed to have the wine. So Rami Bar Chama's question is, Elu Dafka, what was the main variable here that's changing the rule? Is it the Elu, these, the demonstrative, right? Oy Shani Tayim Dafka, or is it that I taste? That's the main thing. When he said that I taste, that's what makes it. He says the grapes, maybe even if he would have said grapes that I taste, grapes that I will not taste is prohibited, right? I will not taste grapes. If he adds in the word taste, then he can't even have the wine. Maybe that's the main point.
If you're saying that it's taste, does it mean that it's already in his mouth because you have to spit it out? If he has a vow, I will not eat or taste the grapes that are in my mouth.
The Ran actually discusses at the end, what did you want him to say? If he just says that it's prohibited, then it's going to be prohibited even for benefit. So how was he supposed to say this if he just wants to prohibit the eating of it? So what did you want him to say? The Ran says there is another way of saying it. He could have said, what was his term? He says, these grapes are prohibited to eat. Didn't have to say that I taste. Prohibited for eating. Yeah. Okay.
I think the shot there is these, because from what I'm understanding is when you make it like specific,
Very good.
is more stringent, and then when you do the kind of like a general statement,
Okay.
it's more lenient.
Okay. We'll take votes. Who holds what? Rami Racham has a question. Which one is the main criteria that's changing the rule? Is it the these, the demonstrative that he says these, or is it that he says that I taste? Which one is the main one? Well, the Gemara now says, if you say, like you're saying, that it's these, that's the word these, so shani tayim lamli, so why do we have to add in that other variable here, that other phrase that says that I taste? You're only confusing me. Why do you have to add that in to say that over there it's going to be prohibited, even the wine and the oil? The Gemara says, Hakamashman is coming to teach me that even though I said that I taste, but it's only if I say these that's going to be a problem. But shani tayim, that I taste, is going to be meaningless. And by the way, this can work the other way as well. Duran points out that if I would say the main thing is the words that I taste, then why do you have to say these? Why are you confusing me with the word these? So he says, the Gemara would have answered the same thing. It's coming to tell me that if I say that I taste, then if I say these, then it doesn't matter anything that I say unless I say that I taste. That's the whole difference. I wanted to tell you that the these is nothing. If I would have gone and taken this Gemara the opposite way, it took one way. Amar Rava Tashima. I want to get to the bottom of the page because on Sunday I don't want to read it again. Tashima. Kainim peris elu alai. Someone says, these fruits are prohibited to me. Kainim hein lafi. They're prohibited to my mouth. Not only can he eat them, but he can't even eat, if he plants them, he can't eat the growth that comes from them. And he also can't, if he exchanged them, these became prohibited to him. So he can't use what they're exchanged for either. But let's say he squeezes them, mutter it would be permissible. And even though he said these, the Gemara says, no. Really, if he squeezes it, it's also prohibited. But I wanted to tell me a bigger chiddush. Wants to tell me that by consecrated items, when you plant them, they're still consecrated. What grows from them is also consecrated. It's coming to tell me that when you exchange it, that's a big chiddush, that even if you exchange it for something, it's also considered prohibited. But of course, when you squeeze it, it's prohibited. That's what it's saying.
I know we mentioned earlier, but why can't you learn it all from Nazir? Because you have all these Yisurim, the Nazir, specifically the grape skins, the grape juices. In other words, if you would have thought that everything's interchangeable, then the guy says, I'm a Nazir. Oh, so you automatically would have said you didn't need all those extra.
Yeah, the thing is here that when it comes to Nedarim, you're only dealing with the vernacular. What does he mean when he says grapes? What does he mean when he says wine? What does he mean?
Yeah, I would think a Nazir is also.
Nazir has its own laws. You can't even have the seeds of the grape.
Right,
Right.
But they're specific.
Tashema, another proof. She'eni yoichel v'she'eni tayim. I will not eat. I will not taste. Of in that case, he can have what the outgrowth of it, and he can have the what's exchanged for it. But probably when he squeezes it, it would be prohibited. That means that the she'eni tayim, that I will not taste, is the main point, because I can't have what's, according to this, can't have when it's I can't have the oil or the wine that's squeezed out of these grapes and olives. Umar says, no, I delay nasabreshi yitzmem, le nasanam b'sefi yitzmem. The truth is that you can have it. So why don't we say it? Because we didn't mention it in the beginning. We didn't mention it in the end. Okay. Tashma. There was a story where Reb Tarfon prohibited this. Rabbi Yehuda, we quoted in our Mishnah. This says Reb Tarfon said I couldn't even have the egg that came from the meat that was cooked together with the meat. The egg that was cooked together with the meat. So you see, you can't have anything from the flavor. The sages said that that's only if he says be'elu. That's only if he says these, or if he says this, right? That's what you were quoting before.
Yeah, but my question is, when he says like he's not gonna have benefit from the taste, it would be allowed for him to sell them, like to exchange it for money, because he's not tasting it.
Right, then that would be permissible. I will not taste it. He could sell it and use the money. Okay, now be'elu loikami bailan. The Gemara explains. I know that if I say these, that it's going to be prohibited, even the flavor that comes out of it, and even the juices that come out of it. The dafkahu, that's specific. Kimi bailan b'sheni tayim dafka elav dafka. My only question is, does the term that I taste also mean that I can't have what comes out of it? So when it says these, I have the answer already. Question is if that works. The sheni tayim. Tashema. So come and listen. Dag dagim sheni tayim asa behem bein b'gdalim bein b'ktanim bein chaim bein b'shalom u'mota b'tris trufa b'tzir. Look at what's going on over here. If someone says fish or fishes, fish and fishes that I don't taste, he uses the term that I will not taste. You can't have big ones and small ones, but he's allowed to have chopped fish. He's allowed to have the gravy. Sounds like he should be allowed to have the oil and the wine if he would have said this about grapes. Amarava ukvar yatsa mehem. That's not a proof, because that's talking about the tzir that had already come out. We're talking about the what had come out previously that he never took a vow on. Now our question is, what happens about tzir that's going to come out from this that he just prohibited on himself? Maybe that's also prohibited. We don't have a proof. Okay, let's leave it over here. Have a good Shabbos, everyone. Shabbos Nevarchim.
Shabbos, Haley. How you doing?
Hashem.